Appreciate you, G. And fellas, I appreciate you guys taking some time out to do this. All you guys that are jumping on when this thing gets uploaded into the drive and you're watching this thing at a later time and date. I appreciate you guys checking this thing out as well. Like Coach G said, he and I met working with the U.S. national team, and it's been an absolute privilege to be able to present. And now this is my second time with the second round of clinics going, so I'm just honored that he'd asked to have me back after my first go round. The first time I spoke, like Coach G kind of talked about, we went over some X's and O's, and we were talking offense, and we were talking, system structure on the offensive side of the football. And another area of passion of mine that I work in and that I get to serve in, that I'm grateful to be able to do so, is in the strength conditioning department. So at Rocky Mountain High School, where I'm the offensive coordinator currently, I've served as a special teams coordinator, pass game coordinator, receivers coach, and I've been the strength conditioning coordinator for Rocky Mountain High School football since 2017. I figured that we'd come in and we'd share a little bit of what we do during the summer. And typically with most of the, strength conditioning presentations that are given, it's typically weight room stuff. And it's, this is the model we run in the weight room. This is how we program the weight room. And I've noticed that most of the clinics I've been at, there seems to be, a little bit of a missing piece where it's like, okay, that's what you're doing in the weight room. And then you get all the X's and O's. But something I believe that's important to our system and our program that we've run over the last now 4 summers is what we do beyond the weight room. And so this is our 4-day summer on field performance model. So what we're doing outside the weight room, not necessarily football, but performance-based development that we do on the field. Like Coach G said, my name is Tim Souza. I live in Boise, Idaho. I coach at Rocky Mountain High School. I'm a USA weightlifting national level coach, certified strength conditioning specialist. I've been fortunate to be awarded with the Regional Coach of the Year award for the Northwest region by the National High School Strength Coaches Association. And I was also very fortunate to be able to serve as the state director for the state of Idaho for the National High School Strength Coaches Association, or the NHSSCA. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about what we are let me know. So growing up, I played as many sports as I could. And I loved playing sports. I loved competing, but I never really trained. Like, I didn't know what it meant to train. I knew what it meant to play, but I didn't know what it meant to train. And I was really fortunate that going into my junior year of high school, my high school in the Bay Area in California, Livermore High School, hired a strength conditioning coach, Mike Perfumo. Coach Perfumo was our strength conditioning coach, and it was the first time I'd ever even been introduced to the concept of strength conditioning was Coach Perfumo. And really what he was able to instill and help me with as I really went all in to develop myself, knowing that could help me, allowed me to become, a guy who's probably going to be a junior, maybe trying to play on JV, to elevate to a guy who could, get to the varsity level and be a contributor at the varsity level, because I was developing myself physically. When it came to college, I walked on at 2 schools, first a Division III school and then a Division II school after having to transfer after my freshman year. And Humboldt State University, where I walked on, the head strength conditioning coach, Drew Peterson, who is, one of the most transformational human beings that in my entire life, was quite literally the reason I got to have and finish a college career. I would not have been able to play all 4 years that I was at Humboldt State without Drew Peterson, without the program, without his development, and without being able to be mentored by him and actually get to the place where I had decided that I wanted to do strength conditioning as my career, what I was going to do. And, other folks that have been mentors from afar, folks that I've learned from. And I've also been fortunate here in the state of Idaho, the former director of coaching education for USA weightlifting literally the person who was putting together the curriculum to train and certify coaches in USA weightlifting, Michael Conroy, is just right down the road. Somebody that I'm incredibly fortunate to have been able to develop a relationship with, someone who shared and helped me grow and learn. And really, as coaches, I won't take credit for any of the stuff I'm presenting being original. I probably stole it from somebody somewhere, and those are the guys that have been the most transformational and the most influential on me. Like I said, I attended Humboldt State University, my bachelor's of science in kinesiology with emphasis in exercise science. Our head strength coach was Drew Peterson. Phenomenal human, absolutely best in the business. He was gracious enough to bring me on as a student, undergraduate student. After my first year at Humboldt State, he brought me on as a student assistant. So I was in my undergrad working as a collegiate strength conditioning staff member, which also allowed me to work on campus as a non-scholarship guy, and not have to go off campus to go make enough money to buy groceries and pay my bills. So I was able to be on that strength conditioning staff and grow my craft. At Humboldt. I have since then earned my advanced sports performance coach as well as my national coach certification through USA Weightlifting. I'm a certified strength conditioning specialist, and I also recently completed my master's degree, master's of science in kinesiology in strength conditioning and corrective exercise orthopedic rehab from A.T. Still University. I've been fortunate to be a part of several staffs out here in the Treasure Valley. My first full head strength conditioning coordinator job was at Nampa High School. I transitioned from there to CUNA High School, where I established a human performance program, which is a in-school PE department based in-class human performance program, which is a strength conditioning program that essentially takes place during the school day in a PE class. So half of the class period in an AB block schedule is spent in the weight room, and the other half is spent on the track, on the field, in the gym, working on different performance elements. Like I said, I'm currently at Rocky Mountain High School, the offensive coordinator, strength conditioning coordinator, and have served in other capacities as well. And since I've been at Rocky Mountain High School, we've been fortunate to be conference champions in 2018, 19, 20, and state champions in 2018, 2020. So what are some critical areas for athletic performance? One of the might be one of the most valuable resources we have in developing our athletes is time. So we need to make sure that we're prioritizing our time well. So what are the things that we need? We identify that we need work capacity. We can also call that aerobic base. We know that your aerobic base or your work capacity is the foundation of all of your attributes, right? Your aerobic system, if we're talking about bioenergetics and energy systems, your aerobic system will contribute to the recovery of every single energy system, and regardless of where it falls on the continuum, all the way up to your ATP and CP, we talk about anaerobic energy system. So we know that we need to establish and develop that base. We need to be able to absorb force. Force absorption is an absolute essential skill. And the reason being is that most injuries happen during deceleration or the absorption of force. It's not necessarily happening during the application of force. It's our body's ability to absorb, withstand, and manage forces that is most crucial. And so not only do we need to be able to absorb it, we also need to be able to withstand it and then reverse it, right? And we train that a ton in the weight room. If you talk about long eccentric tempos or long eccentric lowerings on lifts, like the front squats we did this morning, long 7-second tempo to take it down to the basement. That is force absorption, but we can train it on the field and outside the weight room as well. Change of direction. For us, we know the sport requires masterful transition in and out and between movement skills, right? We're constantly stacking movement skills on top of each other to create sports-specific skills and sports-specific patterns, and that's our ability to transition in and out of and between these skills. And those skills and those movements take place in different planes and in different directions. And we know that dropping our center of mass and creating angles, whether it be our shin angles, joint angles, body angles, those are incredibly important skills for us to be able to change direction. Acceleration, both linear and lateral. What I mean by linear and lateral in our verbiage is linear acceleration. I'm going straight ahead. I need to go from standing still or low speed to top speed as quickly as possible, or laterally doing the same, moving side to side. And rarely in sports do we reach top speed and sustain that top speed. So especially in football. And so what we look at is the one who is first to reach their max velocity is usually going to win. If I'm going to race you across the room or across the field or to a loose ball, and you and I are both moving at the same speed, traveling to a ball that's the same distance away from us, whoever can get to their max speed the fastest is probably going to win the race to that spot, right? Repeat sprint ability. That's another attribute that we feel is essential, because repeat sprint ability is essentially who can maintain top speed, or at least as close to top speed as possible for the longest, right? So in the fourth quarter, it's not necessarily the team who's less tired wins. The team that can still be running the fastest is going to win. And we would say producing the most force. Now, we're talking about, offensive and defensive linemen. It's not necessarily who's traveling the fastest, but who's producing the most force at the end of the game is going to win. So we don't want that to fall off. And then the last, and this is not in any, I didn't number these because all of these are incredibly essential, power production or rate of force development. We need to be efficient at harnessing elastic energy, right? Because our bodies, our muscles have a lot that allow us to produce more energy. We need to harness elastic energy and allow ourselves to create even greater forces, right, through the stretch shortening cycle. So those are some key areas. And so how are we going to take those? We only have 4 days a week. We only have 2 hours during those 4 days. And one of those hours is probably going to be spent in weight room lifting. So how do we chop this up? So example, summer calendar. This was not our summer calendar in 2020. We were fortunate enough to play a fall season, albeit a reduced fall schedule, but we were grateful to still have one. And so this is what it typically looks like. Spring football would begin in the middle of May. The Monday after the state track meet is when spring football begins. And then coming out of spring football, we call the summer transition cycle one, day one, or cycle one, week one is the first week of summer after school has ended. And we typically get 1 to 2 weeks before we go to team camp. Now, team camp obviously is an interruption in our programming schedule, but it's one that we can manage if we plan for it, right? So that's typically falling in the middle of cycle one. We come back from team camp. We have the last 2 weeks of cycle one, week 3 and week 4. We get into cycle 2. We program typically in a perfect world on 4-week cycles. Cycle 2, week 1 happens, the first week of July. Cycle 2, second week of July. Cycle 3, third week of July, we will deload and get ready for what we call our Night of Champions, something that we stole from Urban Meyer when he was at Florida. Night of Champions, it's our testing night. You have to earn your right to test there. And then we have a dead week and we roll into fall camp. So time, everything has to be blocked out and reverse engineered so we know exactly how much we have. So this is an 8-week overview. We periodize on an undulating schedule. It's non-linear, meaning we'll set a base, we'll reach, we'll deload, and then we will perform. And then we'll slightly step back down as we climb ourselves right back up the stair steps to get us through. This is the same philosophy that we would follow in the weight room. And it's important that our on-field work training line up with our training in the weight room. If I'm on a deload week in the weight room, but I have a really heavy week of volume and intensity on the field, I'm not going to align and I'm going to screw up my performance week in the weight room, and I'm going to not have deloaded at all because I didn't deload on the field. So we marry these up. Typically our week at a glance, and this was not our weeks during the summer because we had some COVID protocol that we needed to follow. But typically this is what it would look like. We have 4 groups. We have our varsity big cats. Okay, they're not hogs, they're not big uglies, they're not big nasties. We call them big cats. They're agile, they are explosive, and we want to make sure we keep them that way. Varsity skill players, our JV group trains together for the most part, and our freshman group on their introductory phase during the summer trains together. So we split out among our facilities, our fields, whether it be our backfields, our stadium turf, our weight room, our gymnasiums, we split everybody up. So if you look at it, right, Monday for us, you'll see the weight room emphasis. I want to align with my field emphasis. Again, I don't want there to be conflicting messages going on to the body. The body's trying to adapt to a stimulus. So let's give it a consistent message so we can maximize that adaptation. So we go max effort squats, clean pulls, assistance work. And then we follow that on the field on Mondays with our stationary plyo sequence and some capacity work on a shuttle run. Monday is done. Tuesday in the weight room, we will be snatch. We do snatch in our program, but that's for a different talk. Max effort horizontal press. So if you think about the bench press, horizontal press, floor press, incline, and then assistance work. That's our change of direction work, and then repeats. We talk about drives. We organize our change of direction day into drives, and I'll talk more specifically on that as we get to those slides. Wednesday in the weight room is our clean day, so it's our lower body dynamic day. We'll do some sort of dynamic effort squat, some speed squats. So this is a lighter load, emphasis on velocity and bar speed. Then we will have at 650 you can see that we've split the big cats and the skills. So here they're together. Here on Wednesday, it's important that you note that these guys are split, because at 650, the big cats are in the weight room first. At 650, the skill players are on the turf or on the backfield working sprint mechanics, starts, acceleration work, and quality and tempo work for linear acceleration and lateral acceleration and speed work, right? And then they'll roll into the weight room and do their cleans, their dynamic squats and lower body work. For us, we know that for our sprinters, our speed skill players, we want them to sprint first, right? We want them to sprint first, prioritize speed and acceleration, then we'll go do our dynamic oriented lift. For our big cats, now it's not as detrimental because we actually don't sprint our big cats longer than 10 yards. And we'll talk a little bit about how we do some of their work on this lower body speed and linear lateral speed day, and this max effort sled intervals, and they go through general physical preparedness. Something I stole from a good friend of mine, Taylor Boggs, who spent some time at Charles Bentley O-Line Performance. Philosophically, these max effort sled intervals are something we stole from there. And then our Thursday, we got vertical pressing in the weight room. So you're thinking push press, Z press, push jerk, split jerk, snatch pulls, and assistance work. And then we have our tempo runs that follow our big man circuit, or plyo circuit, our athlete GPP circuit. Some of these days, and the classification of these days, again, is something that I stole from Drew Peterson at Humboldt State. This is how we broke our days down, and I've kind of played with the order and played with the programming. But these themes, if you will, the themes on these days is an idea that all originated at Humboldt State. So this is what I carry with me during one end, my sheet protector. I've got, this is our field work. This is what we're doing. On the other end, depending on what we're doing that day, we are digital with our workout delivery now in the weight room. But I will have this on me in a sheet protector every day of the summer. Here's my Monday work, my Tuesday work, Wednesday, Thursday, and you'll see over here, this is Big Cats Wednesday. So all of our linemen are bigs. If you put your hand on the ground for us, you are not going to do this. You're over here on the Big Cat day. All right, so all of these spreadsheets and all this program is actually something that I was able to use as a project within my strength conditioning emphasis of my master's. And so that's where all of these spreadsheets and all of the organization was able to be put together. So Monday, this is our duration, intensity, volume. If you look at our plyometric, intensity is high and our volume is moderate. Interval capacity work, intensity is moderate, our volume is higher as far as our yardage. Change of direction, our intensity is high, our volume is moderate. Interval capacity work, intensity is moderate, and our volume is also moderate. Our acceleration work, our intensity is high, and our volume is also relatively high, but That's because in my mind, I've combined these two as far as the quality tempo work and our linear stuff. That is going to create a higher volume day there. And then here, if you look, we've got our plyometrics and GPP work, both moderate, and our interval capacity work is relatively low on the volume and intensity. So if you look in the weight room, these are the days that marry up. And I just explained that on that last slide. Now, if we move into cycle two, you'll see some increases, okay, of time, duration, okay, and particularly here. Now, as we look at the weight room, we've changed. We now have max effort back squats in cycle two, whereas in cycle one, we had max effort front squats. We were doing clean pulls, assistance work, snatch complex, max effort horizontal press, clean complex, dynamic back squats, vertical pressing, snatch pulls, and assistance work. When we move into cycle two, max effort back squat, deficit clean pull, snatch complex, and a different variation of a horizontal press, working max effort there, clean complex, dynamic split squats, vertical pressing, and a deficit snatch pull. Now, let's talk about Mondays. Okay, Mondays, we have our stationary plyometrics plus a burst. The emphases, force absorption and deceleration on the plyometrics, maximal force production, ground reaction force, tapping into some high threshold motor units, and high rate of force development, plyometrics. We're using the stretch shortening cycle to produce more power with our plyometrics, and we are highly activating the central nervous system to potentiate that acceleration. So getting the wires hot with our jumps, and then we'll go into a max effort we call the fast five. You should be able to chew up 10 yards of grass in 5 forceful steps. We'll do traveling plyometrics. So we're actually moving, if we're doing bounding, broad jumps, all of those variations of plyometrics we're traveling. And this is huge for force absorption and stabilization. And then we'll do 300-yard shuttles. Now, if I'm totally honest and I'm completely transparent, the shutdown in the spring and some of our limitations that we had coming back, and especially after having athletes come back after seeing us for a couple months in the summer of 2020, I have modified this to where we are not doing 300-yard shuttles every week of the summer like we were in the past. We've actually cut that back. I was finding that I found this summer that we were able to create the same level of capacity, the same times. Guys were making their times with less. And so if I can still create effective adaptation with less dose, I'm going to do that. And so we've actually gone to a couple different schematics. And so not as much volume on that. There are some things that I looked at this summer or this spring going into the summer that I wanted to give a try, and they were incredibly successful. And as we go through the presentation, I'll kind of tap in and let you know some of the things that we've changed. But one of the things we've changed is we don't do 300-yard shuttles every week of the summer anymore. We have tapered some of the strategies that we're using here. So let's look at it all the way through cycle one. These are the first 4 weeks. I look here, really, total volume of foot contacts. We have 105 in week 1, 105 in week 2. We have 58 foot contacts in week 3, and we have 118 in week 4. So you remember the steps on the ladder or on the stair steps that I showed you on that chart for our undulating periodization. You see a deload in week 3, and then we roll up into higher volume in week number 4. If you look down here in cycle 1, we had 900 yards of shuttle volume in weeks 1, 2, and 3, with a deload down to 600 yards in week 3. We deload. We have 900 in weeks 1, 2, 4 with a deload of 3. As we go through cycle, we've upped our foot contacts because we've achieved some adaptation. We've been training for 4 weeks, 129 foot contacts, 109 foot contacts, down to 70, and then we rolled it back up to 129 in this 4th week because this was in our testing week after we had tested. So we went with the same load as week 1. If you look down here at the shuttle runs, we have 4 in weeks 1 and 2, and this should be less down here. That should say 3, and then that should say 4. All right, so let's take a look here at some of All right, so some stationary plyos plus a 10-yard acceleration. So we always start with snap downs, right? We're going to do snap downs. We'll always start with basic and move to complex, right? We're just working force absorption here, trying to rapidly snap ourselves down, store that energy in our tissue, right? Snap down, maintain stiffness, hold that strong position. We are holding for 5 seconds in this week of the summer. You can see down there at the bottom, slam downs with a 5-second hold. We're trying to hold that tight, that isometric hold for 5 seconds, really squeeze, stay tight. And after the fifth, you'll see our 10-yard acceleration burst. Really working on guys getting into the powerful position that they would want to jump. Some of these guys back a little bit more flat than we'd like, but then you see them burst out and get their 10-yard acceleration, their forceful 5 or their fast 5. You'll see them hold and jump and stick the landing. They have to be able to absorb force, harness, produce force, reverse it, right? And then stabilize upon landing again. Snap down, stick. And we did descending pause. The first rep was a 5-second pause. The second rep was 3 down. Let them absorb that 4. Network stop buffering, and we'll be able to look at some of the more. Here we go. So this is a little bit more advanced. This is a split slam down plus a split jump, and then you'll take off. I'll show you one more variation here, and then we will move ourselves right along. Doesn't want to cooperate today. All right, we're moving on. Here we go. So our Tuesday emphases and objectives, right? So we are looking for change of direction as our primary emphasis on Tuesday. We call it change of direction. We don't call it agility days because most of the drills that we're doing are pre-planned. They're planned movement sequence. So that's not agility, right? This requires deceleration, transition between skills, reacceleration, but you've got to drop your center of mass. You've got to pay attention to your angles, and you've got to work on the angles of your feet in and out of those transitions. For us, agility, it has a cognitive and receptive or responsive component in the sense that agility requires us to identify a stimulus that's external and then react to that stimulus. And that's not the case when I'm telling a kid, hey, you're going to shuffle here, run here, backpedal here. That's not agility, right? But it is change of direction. We'll play some games where we'll do like reactive mirroring, where we'll do, all these competitive drills that are truly agility, where you have to react to a teammate or a partner that is providing you with that external stimulus. But the majority of our work is change of direction. And then we finish the day up with some repeats or capacity runs. We call them rapid fires. It's about repeated effort, patterning ability, staying consistent with your patterning under fatigue, and resisting fatigue, buffering and flushing metabolic waste. And so as we look at Tuesdays, I told you that Tuesdays were organizing drives. So if you look here, right, we're doing 2 drives, and each drive is 11 plays in length, right? So all of these movement skills last also repeat sprint ability focused, right? And so we're doing 20s in week 1, we're doing 30s in week 2, we're doing 15s in week 3. That's our deload week. And if you look at what that does to our total volume and yardage, 400, 480, that takes us down to 240, right? And then we'll roll up to 40s in week 4 in our performance week, and that takes our volume up to 640. You'll see the flying 20s, 30s 15s and 40s. We just marry those up with the working distance for that day. In cycle 2 during the 2019 summer, which is what these sheets are from, we would jump to 25. And like I said, I take the first 10 minutes of this and go every 2 minutes instead of every minute on the minute for the first 10. And then the back half of the workout is when we go to every minute on the minute. You'll see the quality work of the flying 20s, flying 30s, flying 15s and 40s. The distances were the same progression: 20 in week 1, 30 in week 2, 15 in week 3, and 40 in week 4, right? But we just moved our time up to 25 minutes. So let's take a look here, and we'll just look at some of our positions we talk about on Wednesday for our stationary sprint mechanics. This is a shorter video, so I'm hoping it loads a little faster. So this is just us working on our top and our bottom positions, right? Just like for our knee and toe at the top, and at the hip, we've got flexion at the knee, we've got good dorsiflexion in the ankle. Now we're going to our 4-position cycle where we go from up to down, top to bottom, right? We're full foot contact here. You go slide, squeeze through, or pull, squeeze through. Now, the reason we talk about pull is just how we negotiate that rocker of the ankle when it comes to foot contact. And then as our center of mass starts to move ahead of our support, and then we start to get to toe off, right? But this 4 position right here that you see us in, this has been a big time game changer for us to focus on creating those isometric holds or the static holds in that 4 position. Our ability to create a shin that is parallel to the ground during our cycle and not cast that foot way out after. Watch this. This will show you us working. This is down. This is making positions transfer. This is pull. Now we're getting to toe off. This is going to be squeeze. And then through. And so if you take that 4-position cycle we did, down, pull, squeeze, through, and then you tell the kid, cycle and hold, cycle and hold. We are taking those positions and stacking them on top of each other to create patterns, right? And that kid who was in that video for us right there was an absolute stud for us this year. That was going into his junior year in 19, and he just had a phenomenal senior season in 2020. So here's a good look at some of the starts.
I got a quick question for you.
By linear acceleration.
I got a quick question for you, Coach. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but you know, you notice sometimes with guys, especially still learning proper sprint mechanics, just getting their turnover right so they can make more impact with the ground. What are some of your main coaching points when you do start to, like, you find a dude who's deficiencies in his turnover, he's got too long of a turnover? What are some of your coaching points, and what are you looking to hammer out first?
So we down sequence, and the term I'll use is attack the ground from above, right? So you need to attack the ground from above. When I'm up in that knee up position, right, my knee pulled up, it's time for me to hammer down underneath my hip. We use the term attack the ground from above, right? And so that helps understand that once I get through my 4, right, I squeeze, I pull through, and then I go down. I think that's the biggest thing that we've been able to communicate as far as understanding what nature or intent we should have within our movement coming out of that knee up position. We don't lift our knees up just to lift our knees up. We lift our knees up to create room to generate force downward and attack the ground from above underneath our hips. And the other thing that cleans things up is doing the wicket drills. You'll see some of the wickets here at the end. And we have some other video that's not in this playlist that I just gathered this past summer that I haven't cut into my clinic tape yet, but it shows exactly how you can get a kid to start to understand that they don't want to cast their foot out to the front side, right? They want to, once their knee comes through, they are striking down underneath their hip, and then their heel goes straight back to their butt, right? We don't want to spend time in that backside reaching with our heel way behind our butt. We don't want to have those backside sprint mechanics. It is knee up, attack the ground from above, heel to your butt, right back through, right? And we make this beautiful shape that we can see from a profile And that's some of what we're doing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, appreciate that, Coach. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you bet, you bet. So we'll do some falling starts. This is a good opportunity to work attacking the ground from above because you're starting in a knee up position, right? You're starting in knee up position. You can see we got our JV group out here right now, right? Attack the ground from above. You're starting in that knee up position. You're trying to strike the ground just behind your hip, right? And so you'll see lean, strike. You see Braden's creating really good angles there. And again, strike, it's attack the ground from above. You'll see some of these guys are still butt kicking a little bit as far as their backside sprint mechanics. One of the things that I really spent a lot of time focusing on was some ways for us to clean up and become more efficient sprinters. And we put a bunch of top end sprint mechanic work in the 2020 season. And we saw a lot of those butt kicking backside mechanics that you're seeing on that tape improve a ton. Crouching starts for us, right? Just creating different angles. I talked about varying our start positions to create force to accelerate from different angles, right? Another look at some younger kids doing it. Don't want to just show you all the varsity studs. We got to have some of the younger kids. Everybody in our program is doing this in some way, shape, or fashion. Kneeling starts. Kneeling starts, again, we work top down, right? So if you notice, we started in falling starts up tall with the top of our head as high as we could get it and our knee and toe up. We went down to crouch and now we're down into a knee, right? Now we're going to go lateral starts, being able to produce force and move laterally and still accelerate, transition from lateral to linear, putting force on through different vectors to still achieve the same goal. So we've got different starts as far as we'll go. Let's see here. See if it'll buffer out for me here. We'll start laterally in a few different ways. We'll start laterally with crossover. We'll do some bounding dynamic work to start laterally. So we should see some crossover starts here. It's about weight distribution. For us here, we're coaching angles, talking about shin angles. We're talking about right here, watch the false step on the front foot. You'll see it right here. His weight distribution was poor, so you'll see everybody come back, right? I'm blowing the whistle and I'm yelling at somebody, but we've just got to be more detail oriented, right? So here's a pop-up start from the floor. Working on getting linear. Again, starting on the ground, we have to create angles. We were talking earlier about force absorption being one of our primary tenets of program design and philosophy. You've got to jump, absorb the force, reverse the force, and then get yourself in the direction that you are trying to travel, right? We want to get to top speed. This is a really young group of kids doing a dang good job here. Again, this is that JV group. You see a modified work out there. We had a hamstring rehabbing out there, backpedaling. Everybody else is side bounding. What the heck's that kid doing backpedaling? He's rehabbing a hamstring. So he's doing all of his running work backward because he was in some of the later stages before he got ready. It from the beginning, and I'll pause it once we get there. Okay, here. Nope. Come on now. Sorry, coaches. That's bad form. Bad form. So I'll talk. That is a reactive start for us, right? It's a reactive start. It's competitive and it's reactive. And so what we would say is the reason that it's reactive is because we partner up, we make it competitive. I just did the same thing again. Gosh dang it. We make it competitive by partnering the kids up. We will give the person in front, we will give them a head start. They get a head start in the drill, okay? They will be ahead by 3-4 yards, and they will be in a position of disadvantage. They'll be kneeling. They will be on their stomach, right? You'll see them in a position of disadvantage. Now, the person behind them is kneeling here while his partner is on their stomach. Kneeling is a more favorable position flat on your stomach. because they have a 2 to 3 yard head start, and you don't start the race until that person says they start the race. There's another variation with a lateral bound, right? We got a lateral speed skater from a 2 or 3 yard advantage, but I've got to overcome all those lateral forces before I can start sprinting. And all my partner has to do is watch me, and they'll know when it's time to sprint. Okay, I'll run it back so we can see one more time here. We love these because this is the closest that you will get to picking out a stopwatch or timing gates as far as getting full speed. These are competitive. This is a race, right? The best way to get kids to run fast and have fun is to make them race. Say, look, get with your best friend and race. And so we really, really have a lot of success with these. We make sure we program these into the back half of the workout to make sure that our force output is still super high. So those cat and mouse competitive and reactive races are a ton of fun. Here's a look at our quality work, flying 30s. So they get about a 10-yard lead in. They've got a 30-yard fly zone. We should be working top end sprint mechanics here to present themselves on that stationary sprint mechanic, down, pull, squeeze through to practice here. Young guys actually doing a really good job here working on making some of those stationary quality work with the wicket that I kind of started researching at the end of the summer. We bought another grip of speed hurdles here. You'll see a 6-step lead in, right? All to get us driving and creating enough space and putting enough force in the ground to us, right? Our feet should land even with the cones. You saw short striding. Some of our more moved out to more advanced hurdle spacing. Here's a good group of older dudes right here, but they should be tall. They should be working. And you talk about the casting of the foot front side, or eliminating some of these backside mechanics, making a kid really pull their heel right up into their butt. There's a good look at a kid from the side right there, right? Our heels coming right up underneath our butt. We're pulling our toes through. You'll see shins getting parallel to the grass here. Some of us better than others, right? But if we're doing this right, we had a lot of success with this in 19, even though we didn't put it until late. And so we put a ton of this in 20. And it paid dividends. We were faster in 2020 than we were in 2019, and we were pretty dang fast in 2019. So let's look at the big cats, right? So we talked about how you didn't see any linemen in those videos on those Wednesdays, right? And so here's our emphasis, right? Our emphases and our objectives on Wednesday for the big cats. They are going to sprint 10 yards maximum effort. They are maximum effort accelerations for 10 yards, right? This is repeat sprint ability because we're putting them every minute on the minute, and they only do up to 10. They're doing kneeling starting positions, and these create and mimic and promote joint angles that are a lot more common in the trenches, right? If you look at offensive line play and the joint angles that you see in offensive and defensive line play, you know, some of these more upright positions that we see with our skill players do not happen with our big cats. And so our big cats are doing everything from kneeling and crouching start positions to create a training effect of joint angles that are in proximity to those that they're going to find on the playing field. All right, so we're doing 10s, and these are every minute on the minute. Then we go into max effort sled intervals, right? We are doing heavy sled pushes in position posture. So what that means is our offensive linemen get into their run fit posture, right? Their run blocking posture, and our defensive linemen and our pass rushers, right, get into their position posture. They'll be more of a flat back, almost looking like a sprinter start. And you'll see the different position postures as we go to the film. They'll do 4-second intervals, 6-second intervals, and 8-second intervals. Again, trying to mimic football in the sense that, look, these guys are having to exert maximum effort for anywhere between 4, 6, maybe 8 seconds. 8 is definitely on the long end, and we put those last. We start with 4s, go to 6s, go to 8s. And that in a 1-to-5 work to rest ratio, so me and 5 other dudes mimics what those big cats are going to be doing on the field. They're going to have to move another body of mass that is pretty substantial in mass, that's also trying to exert force against them, right? We're trying to move another body of mass against its will. So we've got to produce a ton of force for 4-6 seconds to be able to do that. And this is going to simulate the rhythm of the game and the demands of the game for these guys, right? And then we'll do GPP, general physical preparedness. We'll do sled drags, sled walks, sled pulls, medicine ball throws, and we're doing all those in multiple planes as well. So here's what this would look like. So in week 1 of cycle, right kneeling start, or sorry, 3 lateral kneeling starts on the, and another 10 and another 10, where we periodize our intervals, right? And so we're working here, we're doing 4s, 3 4s, 3 6s, 3 8s, and you'll see that carry itself through all the way through cycle 1. And then you'll see all of our accessory work, some battle ropes, some sledgehammers, some tire chest passes, sumo sled pulls, sled adductor drags. Really, adductors are incredibly important for our offensive linemen, so we plug that in. Crossover sled drags, same thing. Just trying to train the body and get the specific needs of our offensive and defensive linemen met in this. Now, if you look at us going here, right, not a lot of difference here in cycle 2, okay? But again, these guys are working their tails off on these max effort sled intervals. I'll show you some video here so we can take a look at it. First of all, let's look. Big cats to us. Big cats to us, they might be big, but they are explosive, right? This young man is actually throwing for the Air Force Academy, but that's a 280-pound human getting up and dunking, right? We want to keep our big cats big. We don't want to run all the weight off of them, but the weight that they carry angles in their play. If these joint angles are going to show up on tape. You know, if we got a pass rusher down here right in front of us who won that race, you know, pretty twitchy dude, another defensive lineman right in front of us here, those angles that you're seeing coming out of these starts are similar to what they're going to look like in their get off, right? Some of these offensive linemen that are, they're going to push in angles, they're working, whether it be in pass, in their position specific demands, those are going to show up on tape, right? And so there's our knee start there. There's some angles of force application into the ground that you're going to see from some of our offensive linemen during play, right? And we're only going 10 yards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he hits it on his 6th step. All right, let's watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he's through on 7. But what I want you to pay attention to is a part of the foot that they're putting force into the ground through. They're driving through their instep. They're creating a positive shin angle. You see a great shin angle right there. Positive shin angle to move him on his angle, right? Offensive line play is about driving your hips on your angle. Well, we create that right here, you know, in our sprint sessions. We're still talking about getting your angles correct in your stance to drive your hips on the angle that we are asking you to dominate on. So here we go, 4-second max effort sled pushes. You'll see a D line here at the bottom, and you'll see some O linemen in the rest of the group. D lineman's got pass rush posture, right? He's got a flat back and he's running, and some of our offensive linemen are working on their insteps, right? Really making sure they're pounding their insteps in the ground. I would like to see some of these guys stay a little bit more externally rotated as far as their shoulders are concerned. The vertical posts of our sleds, we just have some rogue sleds. You know, we just stack a bunch of 45-pound iron plates and we're in the back parking lot here, right? But the rogue sled vertical poles are not optimal for joint centration and getting us, but still a really good look at a guy who played offensive line at a really high level for us right there, working 6 seconds of max effort against a few hundred pounds. And so all summer long, he's training against moving a few hundred pounds, maximal effort, right? For 4 seconds, 6 seconds, and 8 seconds. And you see our offensive linemen's feet, the tempo of their feet and the cadence of their feet as they drive these sleds should be very similar to what they'd be in a drive block situation, right? That should be the same rhythm and cadence that we get. We ask our defensive linemen again, position-specific posture and foot cadence. We're paying attention. We're trying to train for the game. We're not just trying to train to get tired. So again, this is 6 seconds. There's Kevin doing a really good job keeping his elbows in. He's staying externally rotated. I like to get a little bit tighter through his trunk. That's a long body right there. Still working to play with good pad level. D lineman, again, that's his get off angle. You can see the difference, right? That's a little bit different than what we're going to see. Another D lineman, right? This kid's actually at Idaho State right now, working against a few 100-pound max effort. Flatter back, more sure. It's going to look a little bit more like pass rush, and we're okay with that, okay? Because we're talking position-specific posture for our guys during the sled intervals. Okay, let's get to the very last thing because I'm over. So let's go. Our Thursday is our athlete circuit, our big man circuit. Kids have a ton of fun with this. I don't need to walk around and blow a whistle and keep time on this. We give our kids some autonomy on this. We have sleds that will work a concentric emphasis on sled. So concentric contractions do not create as much wear and tear on the body. That helps to build work capacity. It's really the eccentric phase that breaks it down, right? And so that staying in that concentric phase is important for us to not beat our guys up anymore, because this is our 4th day in a row of training. They've been getting after it in the weight room. They've been getting after it on the field, right? You got plyos and medicine ball throws, working on force production, ground reaction force, and utilization of the stretch shortening cycle. We'll do loaded carry. This is our functional core. Our guys ask, Coach, why don't we do sit-ups and leg lifts and leg raises and a bunch of, core work? Well, taking a front squat at 80% down for 7 seconds, or pausing a front squat for 5 seconds in the hole, or doing these loaded carries, that's as much core as we need right there. It doesn't get more optimal or functional than that. So we talk about loaded carries being our functional core. And this actually helps jumpstart our recovery kind of going into the weekend, because this is our last training session before they get a 3-day weekend. We'll finish it with a tempo run, recovery-oriented tempo run, 1 to 4 to 6 work to rest ratio. We're working on the top of the head position on top of hips, 4-position sprint cycle, just another opportunity to ingrain our sprint mechanics into our kids, vertical forces. And then here's that coaching point, Coach G, attack the ground from above, right? So we should still see all of those things. These are not jogs. These are tempo runs. We say, 70% tempo with 100% mechanics. So here would be a look at just how it programs out over the 8 weeks. It's a list of all of our exercises that we program in and how many sets we're doing of everything, how many fartlek or interval runs we're doing, right, for a given week. And again, it goes 4-5, 4-5. We're undulating. Here in cycle 2, it goes 6-7, 5-8, and we're able to undulate. So I'll let this video run here so you can see some of the things that we're doing. It's about 3 minutes, as long as the internet cooperates. There's some loaded carries. We'll walk for about 40 yards. If we have implement like a kettlebell like you see here, they'll go 20 yards and switch. And we do both. We'll overhead carry the bars and the kettlebells. Doing some barrier jumps, whether it's track hurdles. So that was a tailback, defensive end. And then you'll even see an offensive tackle, right, working on being explosive. It was a little slippery that day on the grass, but he stuck the landing. He saved it. There's a wide out. Here's one of our DBs right here going through. That kid actually jumped a 40-inch vertical at the end of this summer. He was a junior in this tape, senior this last year. Again, we're working. He's stepping a little bit on those ankle bounds. I'd like to see him bound. There's a better bound, right? Doing acceleration. And we go and we'll work through. Every kid knows they go to a station, they've got to finish that station 3 times before they can move on to the next station, right? Lateral rocket jumps. We got a bunch of different box jump variations that we'll plug in on this day. Really, this is just like recess. Like there's a bunch of different stations and a bunch of equipment all over the place, and the kids get to go have fun at these stations. They enjoy this. They have some autonomy. Here's some medicine throws. That's we're tossed with rotational throws. We'll do rotational throws to a and take off. Low sled pushes. You'll see some tips a little bit more. Get his hands all the way past his hamstrings and pull through. Okay, this is a better load, and that's good extension. Just some more sled pushes. These are for distance, not for time. This is not position specific posture. This is just a sled drive. We're just looking to put force in the ground and move it. If you don't have sleds, you can use trucks. You got trucks, you use trucks. You can tire events, carries, pushes, pulls. You'll just see guys going through different stations relative to, hey, look, this is concentric emphasis. It's really you're limited by your imagination only. Here's some tempo run. When they hit the cone, enter their work pace. You've got from the cone to the light post, and then they walk back, right? You'll see some guys really focused on mechanics here. We're focused on mechanics, not speed. We are 80% speed, 100% mechanics. Mechanics, make sure we're striking straight down. You see our tempos are picking up a little bit right there, right? And now we're done. So coaches, I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry for some of the technical glitches that we went through there. And sorry that the internet buffered a little bit, but I know I gave you a ton. That was probably like drinking out of a fire hose. But if you guys are back watching the recording of this, at least you can pause and rewind and take some notes. So Coach G, what do you got for me, man?
Well, what I was going to say is, first of all, awesome presentation. And Coach, I'm sure, and I will be one of them, but if coaches want to follow up with you and talk some more, just maybe even one-on-one,
right.
Could you share your contact information with them?
Yeah, man, I should have that here on this slide. I'm like ashamed that I don't even have that on this slide.
Good.
Right here.
Obviously his Twitter is very available. I tweeted it out a few times, so.
Yeah, that would be the first thing that I would recommend is hit me up on Twitter, and we can get a conversation going from there. I mean, some of the most fruitful professional development conversations I've had in the last 3-4 years have all started with a Twitter DM. Yep. Right. So my inbox is open. Hit me anytime. Follow the link that Coach G tagged. I'd be more than happy to do it. Yeah, man.
Coach, question for you with the wicket stuff. I know how beneficial that stuff is. Now, could you kind of explain? Obviously, there's you want to set it up in a certain way. So first and foremost, how are you setting it up to begin with as far as distance? And then the second part to that would be, clearly there's, kids have different leg lengths and things like that. So how are you separating that? And, what are the certain distances that you have set for them?
Right. So I'm going to actually go over here, grab my phone and get my cheat sheet real quick. And this is really, I just went on Simply Faster, right? That's been my resource for a lot of the sprint-based football training. It's been the Simply Faster articles that are the Wicket articles they put out. They do a phenomenal job. So what I look at is in the article that I reference off the most, right? They only have two different sets that I work off of, right? So there's a table of recommended spacings for new sprinters, and then a table of recommended spacing for developed sprinters, right? And then what I have are the acceleration markers that we'll use. And we actually use the same acceleration markers in the 6-step lead up for everybody. And then it just changes after that, right? So for instance, like for new sprinters, right? We put the distance between hurdles 1 and 2 is 5 feet. Then we go to 5 feet again. Then we go 5-3, 5-3, 5-6, 5-6, 5-9, 5-9, 5-9, a third one. Then it goes 6 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. And we actually never get further out than that. We only go out to that first 6 foot hurdle. And what I've done is I've actually taken a measuring tape, right? And I've got a long measuring tape, and I just have marks on the measuring tape. And then we even have like a backup. We started with a string, right? We've got a string, and I painted on the string a long line for a hurdle, and I painted on the string a short line for an acceleration marker, right? And so all we've got to do is take out that measuring tape or take out that string, lay it down, and then I tell a kid, you know, hey, you hold that end, you hold that end. And I get a bunch of other kids and say, look, you guys have cones for acceleration markers, put the acceleration markers next to the short dot. You guys have hurdles, come and put the leg of the hurdle right next to the long mark on the string, right? And so we get it set up pretty quick. We found a way to kind of speed up our process because we don't have it like spray painted onto our turf or anything. The acceleration markers that we work off of, you know, obviously the starting line is 0, and then marker 1 is 4 feet, marker 2 is 4.3, marker 3 is 4.6, marker 4 is 4.9, marker 5 is 5 feet, marker 6 is 5.3, right? And then we go from there, and we'll build out the top end wicket spacings for the either new or developing sprinters. And what I've kind of picked up on, and what most of the folks that are listening and probably picking up on, 3-inch intervals every 2 to 3 strides at top end is how you want to increase your distances. And then it's 3-inch intervals on our acceleration markers from 1 through 6, starting at 4 feet and working up to 5.3.
Awesome. Yeah, that's always something that, you know, obviously it's the benefits to doing that wickets is incredible, and kind of what we were talking about before with the turnover, because you notice sometimes, right, guys have that just elongated type of turnover, and they're doing themselves a disservice. So that can really help them kind of iron that out. But you want to make sure that the distances are correct, or it's just kind of counterproductive, right? So definitely awesome. And honestly, work smarter, not harder, right? So you marking the tape already, laying it out.
Got to. You know, I can't remember all these numbers off the top of my head. You saw I had to go to my phone, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I just you know where my limitations are, work around them.
For sure. Nah, Coach, I appreciate that, man. Like I said, and for the other coaches in here, definitely hit him up on Twitter. But you know, I know for me personally, I certainly will, because you know, I'd like to learn some more about it. And clearly, you know, Coach Souza is a stud when it comes to this stuff, man. And you know, just had it. I mean, and like you said, there was a lot of information there, and that's why it's good to kind of follow up or watch this back, so you know you can gather it all. But I mean, honestly, the information, all that information provided, just goes to show how much detail he goes into. And you know, I mean, that's really cool. I mean, you're hammering all different aspects, and like you said, the results were there. So you know, the increase in speed from 19 to 20, and coaches, if you didn't know, they just came off a state championship win. So clearly, you know, it didn't hurt.
It didn't. Yeah, shoot, man, I didn't screw them up. That's really how I look at it. Like, we got really good kids, man, and I didn't ruin them. You know, so I mean, when it comes down to creating any program, right? It doesn't matter if it's a practice plan, it doesn't matter if it's your weight room program, it doesn't matter if it's your install, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, what you're doing on the field for your field work. Like, you've got to identify how much time do I have and what are my primary areas of emphasis, and then you just reverse engineer it from there.
True. Now, Coach, you know, just to kind of piggyback off that statement, do you feel like a common mistake for coaches is they don't take into account the time, and they just kind of, you know, hey, look, let's just jump in and do whatever that, you know, hey, this stuff works, but if you don't have the time, or maybe it doesn't make sense at the time that you have, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing is, like, everybody's situation is different, right? Especially this year. Like, y'all haven't played, you know, we played a season, some people play a season and stopped. Like, so everybody's situation is different always, but especially now. I think the best thing we can do is, like, keep the main thing. What, like, even if something looks cool, or even if, you know, you really like to do something, like, I've got to do that constantly. Like, okay, yes, but I'd like to have that, but that's not my main focus, right? And I think that's why it's powerful to identify, like you said, like, what time do I have and what are my most important priorities, and then only deal with the priorities that fit within the time that you have. And that's the name of the game. That's how we can be efficient.
One more question for me, just because I notice this with a lot of kids, especially younger ones coming up, but shoot, even the high school kids. You notice, like, depending on where you're at, right, there sometimes is a lack of attention to flexibility in the hips. Obviously, you kind of know. So how do once, first and foremost, is that something that you notice? And then what are some of your initial, I guess, exercises or lifts, or like if you got a kid that comes in and his hips are stiff, he doesn't have that flexibility. What's your plan for him?
Right. So I feel it right now, right? Like I've been here sitting and giving a talk, and so my butt's falling asleep and my hips are getting tight as we speak. You know what I mean? So like that is a common consequence of just our way we live, right? We sit down on couches, we sit in desks, we sit at chairs, right? And so we're always sitting, and our hips can get locked up. And more times than not, I struggle with ankles and heel cord calf complex mobility than I do hips. The hips, it's stiff, but if you're not looking in the right places, you could mistake a kid that's got really, really bad ankle mobility for a kid that has bad hip mobility, right? Just because the hip won't move further than the ankle will allow it. If you're standing on your feet, your ankle's closer to the ground than your hip, right? So you're gonna see the consequence of that a little bit more. If I looked at it right, and I was gonna say, okay, right here, this dude right here, right, Kelly Starrett, like most folks have probably heard his name. Kelly Starrett was Mobility WOD, the Supple Leopard, now the Ready State. Absolutely phenomenal when it comes to mobility, period, right? And so that dude is where I saw a lot of my stuff from, as far as like direct mobilizations of the tissues that affect these different joints, right? How am I going to open up the heel cord calf complex? How am I going to open up, the hip complex? Because there's so many muscles that tie into the hip. But if I'm honest with you, a heels elevated goblet or Zercher or zombie squat, but goblet's always the easiest to start with.
Yeah.
And paused time in there, elevated heels is important. An anterior load, or a load that's held in the front half of the body. Like the two fastest ways to clean up squatting mechanics are elevating the heels and holding the load anteriorly. And so if you do that, right, that's where you're going to be able to get those tissues used to that length, because just stretching, right, is not the same kind of load that an athlete's muscles are used to. Like the amount of load and tension that we put on our tissues, like in play, in sprinting, like the forces that your body weight undergoes in max effort sprinting is way more significant, way more forces than your body's going to, or tension that your body's going to sustain, like if you bend over and try to touch your toes, right? So there's like different modalities that you can use to create change by like providing enough mechanical load to actually get these tissues and the properties of these tissues to change. And this dude right here, Kelly Starrett, is the man, and that was where I've stolen tons of my stuff from. But I would say that even from the way that we train, like unless we're like peaking and we're doing something specific for peaking, like we are a full depth squat team. Like we are, hamstrings cover the calves, upright torso, we front squat, we overhead squat, we high bar back squat, we don't low bar. Our knees are always over our toes with our feet flat in the squat, or our heels elevated, but still surface under our heels. You see, you look at all the guys that are using the wedges on underneath the heels of 6'7" basketball players, getting them to squat down, where they belong. It's a beautiful thing. So everybody can get there. It's just a matter of like us as coaches manipulating the constraints of the movement to help their bodies get where they need to be. And that helps us a ton. Our ankles and hips are inherently mobile just because of how we are squatting. We clean and we catch it all the way down. We snatch, we catch it in the bottom of an overhead squat. We do pause squats, pause overhead squats. So we're always down there. So that's where we get a lot of it is, believe it or not, we get more flexible in the weight room, awesome, more mobile, stuff. I should say.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I'm glad I asked that because that was, how you explain that, man. That's really good stuff. Awesome. Coaches, once again, Coach obviously had shared his contact. Well, I had shared it on Twitter. I posted it a few times. So make sure if you have any questions, man, reach out to him. Obviously, Coach, he's a busy dude, but more than willing to chop it up with you and help out. And that's the beauty of it, right? Because we were all in that position before where we were looking to reach out to somebody in regards to whatever. And coaches were gracious enough to help us out. So it's only right to return the favor, right? And that's the beauty of this, and it's just an ongoing deal. And that's what one of the many aspects that makes the football coaching community so special is the willingness and ability to help each other out and continue to push each other forward, right? That iron sharpens iron deal. So appreciate you guys coming in here, man. Coach Souza, once again, always a pleasure for you. Like I said, I'll be reaching out to you because I want to chop it up with you more of a one-on-one basis in regards to some of this stuff. And just loved it. It was a great presentation, man. Obviously, ton of knowledge. You busted your butt to get to where you're at, man, and it's awesome to see that. So I appreciate you taking the time out for sure.
Yeah, no problem, man. Always a pleasure. Like Coach G said, Twitter's easy. At Coach_T_Souza, SOUZA, my last name, and then my email is really similar in format, coach.t.souza@gmail.com. So hit me up anytime. Always happy to share. And thank you guys. Thank you, Coach G, for having me on, and coaches watching. Thank you so much. It's an honor.